day, grade 9 learners. Welcome to today's natural sciences lesson. My name is Pathicheta Singo, and this lesson is proudly brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education. In today's lesson, we're going to be learning under the knowledge area, life and living. The topic for today is digestive system, and the subtopic is the alimentary canal and digestion. Today's lesson objectives are as follows. By the end of today's lesson, you should be able to differentiate between ingestion and egestion, describe the movement of food from the mouth to the anus, explain the function of each organ of the digestive system, and all this is sourced from the CAPS document on page 62. Let's move on to pre-knowledge. This is what you have learned prior to today's lesson. In the 4th grade, you learned about living things. There's quite a number of living things that you learned about. You learned about animals, plants, bacteria, or rather microorganisms, fungi, and people, which is you and me. And let's move on to the next slide, which is also pre-knowledge. In the 8th grade, you learned about respiration. And in the 9th grade, we learned about human systems. And we did learn about the digestive system. So today we are continuing, or we are adding on to our knowledge of the digestive system. I've collected some pictures here just to show you guys most of your pre-knowledge. So this image here represents respiration. So when we're learning about respiration in the 8th grade, we were learning about how the body makes energy or produces energy from the food that we eat. And in grade 9, we learned about human systems, particularly the digestive system. We learned about the parts that make up the digestive system. We named them, and we also learned about what the main functions of the digestive system are, which is to break down food and make sure that absorption of nutrients takes place, and any waste products that result from the digestion of the food are excreted from the body. Let's do a baseline assessment just to get our lesson started. So the first question is, what is the purpose of the digestive system? The second question reads, which organ temporarily stores feces? The third question reads, what is the difference between ingestion and egestion? The fourth question is, which process happens in the stomach? And then the last and final question, which is the 5th question, reads, what do the teeth and saliva do to food that is digested? So I'm going to give you a total of 5 minutes to answer these 5 questions. Alright, now don't forget to send your answers. You can take a picture of your exercise book, send your answers to our WhatsApp line, which is 082-760-2630. It will appear at the bottom of the screen as well, just in case you didn't catch it. Let's move on to our solutions. Let's start with solution number 1. The question was, what is the purpose of the digestive system? The purpose of the digestive system. Now, let's answer the question. It is responsible for breaking down the food that we eat into small particles. These particles are then capable of being absorbed into the bloodstream, and then they are then transported to the cells throughout the body. So the purpose is to make sure that the food that we eat is broken down so that our body cells can take up the smaller components. Which organ temporarily stores feces? So the solution here is the rectum. Let's move on to the second slide. The third question, what is the difference between ingestion and egestion? Let's look at the solution. Ingestion is the intake of food into the body, whereas egestion is the elimination of waste out of the body. So that is the difference. And then the fourth question is, which processes happen in the stomach? Right, so the stomach has substances within it that help digest the food. The stomach also contracts to break down the food further into a liquid. So there is digestion that is happening in the stomach. And then question 5, what do the teeth and saliva do to food that is ingested? So this is the food that we put into our mouth. Let's see the solution. So digestion actually starts in the mouth. And when the food is chewed, it is mixed with saliva. So this is what happens. So the teeth chew or break down the food, and then the saliva mixes with the food. Let's move on to terminology. These are important terms that we're going to come across during our lesson. So it is best that we learn these terms beforehand. So the first term is ingestion. What is ingestion? Ingestion is taking in food into the mouth. The second term is digestive system. We've met this one quite a few times. Digestive system. It is a series of organs joined in a long tube from the mouth to the anus. Each organ is responsible for aiding the process of digestion. The next term is mouth. The mouth is an opening where ingestion takes place. It has teeth and saliva that help to digest food. So each of you just touch your mouth there. Tongue. Tongue is a muscular organ in the mouth used for moving food towards the teeth during chewing and moving food to the back of the mouth during swallowing. There's your tongue. And the esophagus. The esophagus is an organ that connects the mouth to the stomach. So it's actually the pathway that gets the food that you have ingested and chewed to the stomach. Let's look at some more terms. Peristalsis. The rhythmic contraction of the muscle layers in the digestive canal that push the food down. So that is your peristalsis. And then stomach, a thick muscular organ with walls that contract and churn food. And then rectum. What is a rectum? This is the place where stools are temporarily stored before being excreted. And then the anus, an end opening of the digestive system through which wastes are ejected. Now, let us begin our lesson, the alimentary canal. So I have sourced the diagram of the alimentary canal, and we're going to discuss it now, showing you the different structures that make up the alimentary canal. So we'll start at the top here with the mouth. So this is the mouth. Remember we said this is the opening where we find your teeth and tongue. This is where digestion begins, that is the mouth. And then near the mouth we have these structures, these 1, 2, 3 structures. They are called salivary glands. The salivary glands produce the saliva that you find in the mouth, the saliva that mixes with the food during digestion. That saliva is very special because it contains within it saliva enzymes. These are special enzymes that work in breaking down food. Right. Below we have the esophagus. Remember I said it connects the mouth to the stomach. So the food comes down in that direction. And then we have the stomach. That is the stomach. That's the structure. This is the stomach. Below the stomach we have the pancreas, and then we have a liver and the gallbladder. Right. From the stomach we have the large intestine that spans all this way. That is your large intestine. And then in the middle here, this entanglement there, that is the small intestine. And then we have just above the anus we have the rectum. Those are the organs that make up the digestive system or the alimentary canal. A fun fact about the alimentary canal is that it spans a distance, or it is about 9 meters long. So you have 9 meters from here all the way here. That is an interesting fun fact to know. Let's talk about the parts that make up the alimentary canal. We'll start with the mouth. Right, so this is where ingestion happens. So if you're asked which process takes place at the mouth, you say ingestion, and this is where digestion begins. So what happens at the mouth? So we have the teeth. The teeth bite the food. Imagine yourself biting something, biting a piece of food. So the teeth bite the food, and then once the food is bitten, the teeth continue to mash the food together with the tongue. So the teeth chew the food and the tongue rolls the food and pushes it towards the teeth. And then what else happens in the mouth? The saliva enzymes from the salivary gland help to digest the food. Remember when I was showing you the salivary gland? So that is where the saliva comes from. So within the saliva there are special structures called enzymes. They help to digest the food. So once all this has happened, the tongue then pushes the food to the back of the mouth for swallowing. So here is a short video showing you a piece of food that is being chewed within the mouth. You can see the tongue pushes the piece of the food towards the teeth. The teeth chew the food, breaking it down. So once the chewing has been completed, the tongue then pushes the food to the back of the mouth for swallowing. Let's move on to the next part of the alimentary canal, which is the esophagus. So what happens? Which process takes place in the esophagus? There's an important process called peristalsis. Remember, we came across this term when we were defining terms. So what really happens in the esophagus? So once the tongue pushes the food to the back of the mouth for swallowing, there's a special structure called the pharynx. It pushes the food into the esophagus. Have you ever wondered how you have your windpipe, which is your trachea, and then you have your esophagus, same on the neck, and somehow when you are chewing you don't choke? So what happens is the pharynx, what it does is it covers the windpipe when you are swallowing so that no food goes into the windpipe, and the food then goes into the esophagus. So that is how we do not choke. So once the food has been pushed into the esophagus, the food then moves from the esophagus to the stomach through a process called peristalsis. I've got an image here to show you how peristalsis happens. So the tongue rolls the food into a ball. It is a ball shape. So this food then goes down the esophagus. How does that happen? So when there is contraction, so there's contraction above the ball of food, pushing the food ball downwards. So as the ball is going down, there is some contraction happening right above where the ball is. So if the top part contracts, the bottom part relaxes. Why does it relax? Those muscles relax so that the ball of food can be able to move downwards. So the top part, the muscles that are above the food ballers, they contract, pushing the food ballers down, and the muscles that are below the food ballers relax, allowing the food ballers to go down. The next part of the alimentary canal is the stomach. What happens in the stomach? So the process that happens in the stomach is actually digestion. So the stomach is made out of muscles, so it has muscular walls. These muscular walls are strong and they churn the food. So the stomach is also capable of expanding. What is to expand? To expand, remember, is to get bigger. So the stomach is capable of expanding, so it's got ridges within it to allow the stomach to expand. That's why sometimes you finish a whole big plate of food and you wonder how all of it went into your stomach. Your stomach is actually capable of expanding. It can get bigger. So once the stomach also has what are called gastric juices. These gastric juices contain with them special enzymes that continue to digest the food. Remember, we learned about enzymes that are found in the saliva. We also find enzymes in the stomach where there are gastric juices that break down the food. The lower end of the stomach has a special muscle that controls the movement of substances out of the stomach. Let me show you a picture. Right, there's a picture. So food goes into the stomach. Once it gets to the stomach, right, you see these layers of muscles. This is layer 1, this is layer 2, and this is layer 3. These layers are very important because they help to churn the food, and the stomach is capable of expanding, which means it can get bigger. Within the stomach, remember we said we find gastric juices. These gastric juices help to digest the food. So when the digestion has happened, the food has to come out of the stomach. Here we find a special muscle. The special muscle opens and closes when the stomach needs to empty its contents. So contents don't just move along from the mouth to the esophagus to the stomach to the intestines. There is some kind of control that is there. Let's move on to the small intestine. Right, so what happens at the small intestine? We have the process of absorption. There are more things that also happen at the small intestine. So at the small intestine, we have some enzymes that continue to break down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So digestion is still happening. Digestion is still going on. What else happens? So the food is broken down and absorbed by the lining through the villi. I'm sure you are listening and you're hearing this new term villi. What are villi? Right, I'll explain just now. So muscles move the remaining substances into the large intestine. Now let's talk about this villi that I just told you. So this is your small intestine. This whole bundle of tubes here. That is your small intestine. So inside the small intestine, remember the small intestine is a tube-like structure. So inside the small intestine, we find finger-like structures called villi. I have labeled them there, so we find them. We have villi there. these are very, very, very important structures, because within the villi we have blood vessels called capillaries. So remember we said there's absorption that happens in the small intestine. So the nutrients that are the products of digestion are then absorbed by the villi, right? And then remember the villi have capillaries within them, so they go into the capillaries and into the blood. Then the blood transports these various nutrients to different cells where they are required. Let's move on to the large intestine. Here there is the absorption of water. Remember last week when we learned about healthy diet and the components of a healthy diet, we mentioned water. We said water was not a food, but it is very important because it helps in the excretion process and helps you to avoid constipation. So let's talk about water. Water is absorbed from the undigested waste. So remember, the small intestine continued the process of digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And then, now, the undigested substances then move from the small intestine to the large intestine. So once the undigested substances or the undigested food gets into the large intestine, what happens is water is absorbed from that undigested waste. So water is very important. So the waste is then stored in the large intestine for up to 24 hours. So that's just about a day. That's why sometimes you go to the bathroom today and you don't go for the rest of the day, and then you go to the bathroom on the following day. So this is where feces are created. They are created in the large intestine. I have a picture here of the large intestine. In the digestive system, you see the large intestine is the one that surrounds the small intestine. So this is the large intestine. There it is. And then we have the rectum. What is the purpose of the rectum? This is where feces are temporarily stored. They don't stay there for long. They're just there for a short period of time. Let's look at this diagram showing us the rectum. So this is the rectum. This structure there. It lies at the end of the large intestine and just above the anus. Let's move to the anus. Right, so the main function of the anus is ejection, which is the excretion of waste. That undigested waste that has been turned into feces is excreted through the anus. And here's a picture of the anus. There we go. There it is. There's the label there. So it is found just below the rectum. So we've been talking about parts of the digestive system, which are the different organs of the digestive system. Right, now let us move on to digestion. So just a quick recap. So we spoke about the mouth, where digestion begins. From the mouth, the food then moves on to the esophagus, where it moves down into the stomach through the process of peristalsis. Once it reaches the stomach, the food is churned by the strong muscles of the stomach, and there are gastric juices inside the stomach that also help to break down different kinds of foods. The food then exits the stomach and moves on to the small intestine. How does it exit the stomach? There's a special muscle at the end of the stomach that allows substances to come out of the stomach. So once the food has moved on to the small intestine, there is some digestion that continues. We have the continued digestion of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates by the intestines, the small intestines. So once that food has been digested and broken down, that food is absorbed within the small intestine through special finger-like structures that are called villi. These villi are very special because they contain with them capillaries. Those blood capillaries then take up the nutrients and send the nutrients to different cells that need them. Now, so we have absorbed the necessary nutrients and now we are left with the undigested waste. So the undigested waste is then moved on to the large intestine. So the large intestine, now what happens there? In the large intestine, we have the absorption of water. That's where we absorb water from the undigested waste, and then we have feces being created. These feces can be there. That undigested waste can last there for about up to 24 hours. So from there, the undigested waste that has been created into feces, we're now calling it feces, post absorption of water. The feces are then sent over to the rectum and then they are excreted or ingested through the anus. Now let's move on to types of digestion. So there are different types of digestion. You've been hearing me talk about chewing, churning, and enzymes. Let's learn about the different types of digestion. So digestion, remember, digestion turns the food that you eat into tiny molecules that can be absorbed in the bloodstream. So there's two types of digestion. We have chemical digestion, which is the first one. With chemical digestion, we're talking about enzymes. So enzymes break down food into smaller pieces. For example, the enzymes that are in the saliva, in the mouth, and the ones that are in the stomach. So we break down chemically. And then we have mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion. So with mechanical digestion, food is broken down through chewing, churning, and mashing. So this happens in the mouth by the teeth, and it also happens in the stomach by the stomach muscles. They churn the food. I have a diagram here that shows us mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Just to sum up and further explain what I mean by these type of digestion. So we have food that is ingested into the mouth, right? And then we have that food being sent to the stomach. So in the mouth, the food is chewed and it's rolled by the tongue and rolled into a ball. So that is mechanical digestion. It's physical. The act is actually physical. So if it's physically breaking it, tearing the food when you're biting it. Imagine yourself tearing into or biting into a piece of biltong. So when you're tearing it, that is mechanical because it is physical. So this food is broken down to different nutrients. Remember, we learned about these nutrients last week. We learned about carbohydrates, proteins, and we learned about your fats and oils, which are your lipids. Now, on the other side, chemical digestion. Chemical digestion also begins in the mouth. Why do you think I'm saying it begins in the mouth? Remember, we said chemical digestion involves enzymes. It involves enzymes, and in the mouth, in the saliva, we find enzymes. So these enzymes start breaking down the food inside of the mouth. Further down, remember we mentioned the continuation of digestion in the stomach as well. So there is some more chemical digestion that happens in the stomach. And then further down in the small intestine, we also have some chemical digestion. Remember we said there's continued digestion of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So there are some enzymes that are still working on that food, breaking it down and digesting it so that the food can then be absorbed and taken up by the villi. Let's move on to mechanical digestion. Right. So the food pushes the food is pushed by the tongue under the teeth so that the food can be physically broken down. So you're chewing, crushing, mashing the food into small pieces. Have you ever tried to chew your food and then spit it out? It looks very different from the food before you put it into your mouth and after you've chewed it and spit it out of your mouth. So that is physical, that is mechanical digestion. Let's look at the mouth. So the mouth is full of these teeth, the upper level, and we have the lower teeth, and then we also have the tongue in the middle. So these are very important in the digestion of food. Right, let's talk about the other part of mechanical digestion, which is the churning walls of the stomach. So the churning walls of the stomach break the food into small pieces, into small pieces. So those muscles, you see there's so many layers. There's a first layer, and there's a second layer, and there's a third layer, which means these layers are working together to churn the food, to further digest the food. Remember, this food should be broken down such that it is so small that the naked eye won't be able to see it. So a lot of work is put into digesting the food. Now let's talk about chemical digestion more. Saliva in the mouth has enzymes that break down the food into smaller pieces. Where are these enzymes produced, and where is the saliva produced? The saliva is produced in the salivary glands. So the salivary glands are found near the mouth, and they produce saliva which contains saliva enzymes. And the hydrochloric acid found within the stomach contains enzymes which chemically change the structure of food so that it can be absorbed into the bloodstream. Remember, the food goes into the stomach after the tongue has rolled it as a bolus. So once it reaches the stomach, when it leaves the stomach as a liquid. So there is a lot of digestion that is still happening, and the food is changing from from the solid form. Think of your pap. You eat your pap as a solid. It's not a liquid. It's a solid. So when it gets to the stomach, it becomes a liquid, and those contents then move on to the smaller intestine. And enzymes in the small intestine also break down the food. So we have enzymes in the mouth, we have your hydrochloric acid in the stomach, and we have enzymes in the small intestine. These are all taking part in chemically digesting the food. Now let's do an activity together. Question 1. Name the main processes that take place in the digestive system. State how chemical digestion takes place and give examples of where it happens. Explain what mechanical digestion is. Name the process shown in the diagram below. Alright, so there is an activity for you to do. I'm going to give you a total of 5 minutes to complete this activity.
Excellent. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you are gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence.
You have been given power to decide whether you want good results in your life, in your schoolwork, or you want bad results. As Tony Robbins said, it is in the moment of your decision that your destiny is shaped. And your destiny is shaped right now with the decisions that you are currently making in your schoolwork. So decide whether you want to be an A student and start working on it, because there is power inside of you. The infinite power is inside of you, and the time you decide to tap in that power, you will become who you want to become in your schoolwork. Do you know that you are different? Do you know that your fingerprint is different? It's different from your peers, from the people that you are studying with. So do not compare yourself with your peers. Do not compare your results with what they're getting, because you are different. You have your own talents and skills, and also you have your own gifts. Embrace what you can do. Always put in the work to make sure that your results become better than what they were yesterday. But do not compare yourself, because when you compare yourself, you do not know what another person has, and they do not have what you have. So believe in yourself. You are different, and keep on putting the work.
All right, grade 9s, let us work on the solutions together. Question 1. The question read, name the main processes that take place in the digestive system. So there are 4 processes that take place in the digestive system. We have ingestion, which is when you put food into your mouth. We have digestion, which is the breaking down of the food into small particles. We have absorption, which is when those small particles, those nutrients, are taken up by the blood vessels in the small intestine. And we have egestion, that is when the waste is excreted from the body through the anus. The second question read, state how chemical digestion takes place and give examples of where it happens. Right, so saliva in the mouth has enzymes that break down food into smaller pieces. So chemical digestion takes place in the mouth. How does it happen? The saliva enzymes break down the food into smaller particles. Where else does chemical digestion happen? So we have hydrochloric acid in the stomach. So when the stomach contents, those gastric juices break down food particles in the stomach. That is what we call chemical digestion. And we also have enzymes in the small intestine. So these enzymes also break down food. The next question, explain what chemical digestion is. So what is it? Right, mechanical digestion is the physical breaking down of food through chewing, churning, and mashing. Where does it happen? It happens in the mouth by the teeth, and it also happens in the stomach by the stomach muscles. And then the fourth question, name the process shown in the diagram below The process is peristalsis. There's the diagram again. I'm going to explain how peristalsis happens again. Right, so we have an area of contraction, meaning the muscles pinch, they become smaller above the foot bolus. There, pushing the foot down, and then the muscles underneath the foot bolus are relaxed, allowing the foot to go down and pass through. And then, so above the muscles that are above the foot bolus are contracting and contracting and contracting. I'm sure you got those solutions. Don't forget to send your solutions to our WhatsApp line, which is at the bottom of the screen. The number is 082-760-2630. Right, let's move on to the next activity. So in the next activity, we are supposed to write down the functions of the following organs. So these are the organs that make up the digestive system. The first one is stomach or esophagus, the small intestine, the anus, and the large intestine. I'm going to give you 6 minutes to complete this activity.
Excellent. Excellence is a habit. Excellence is a quality you have, a quality I have. It's a quality we have when we honor what is true to us. Yes, we are gifted differently. uNkulunkulu akasinganga ngokufana. Excellence is striving for your best. Whenever you have a particular project, test, homework, uzibuze, ask yourself, is this my best? Can I put in more effort? Excellence is striving to be in the top 1% of the area in which you are gifted. And so I challenge you, in every single thing that you do, in every single area that you're gifted in, whether it's sports, it's academic, ucula, whatever that gift is, strive for excellence. Dreams. What is your dream? Yini iphupho lakho? Not your parents' dreams, not your mom's dream for your life. What is your dream? Is it to get a bursary? Is it to study science? Is it to become a DJ? Is it to become a singer? What is your dream? Iphupho lakho. Once you have that dream, what I need you to do, I need you to write it down. Ingole mofati. Write it down, ibhale phansi, and read it each and every single day when you wake up. Read it each and every single day before you go to bed, and remind yourself of where you want to see yourself. What is your dream? Write it down, meditate on it, and go after it with everything that you have.
Solutions for the functions of those different organs that we listed. Okay, so we have the stomach. So the thick muscular walls of the stomach contract and churn stomach contents. And then the esophagus, it's the organ that connects the mouth with the stomach. So food moves down the esophagus through the process of peristalsis. And then the small intestine breaks down food to be absorbed in the lining. The anus is the end opening of the digestive system, which digests waste, and the large intestine absorbs and creates the waste products that we call feces that are then excreted. Right, I'm going to check if there are any WhatsApp questions. Let me see. Right, so there are no WhatsApp questions for today. However, you can still send your WhatsApp questions after the lesson is completed. So let's summarize our lesson. So when you eat your food, this is called ingestion in the mouth. The teeth chew the food until it's smashed into pieces small enough to be swallowed. And then food then moves down the esophagus in a long tube that reaches to the stomach. So once the food enters the stomach, it mixes with enzymes and gastric juices that break down the food even more. This is digestion that happens in the stomach. And then the food is now a liquid. So once it's a liquid, it then moves out of the stomach into the small intestine, where the nutrients are absorbed and some digestion also takes place. And then waste products move into the large intestines, and some nutrients or minerals and water are absorbed. So this is undigested food. Right. Next slide. So feces are stored for a short time in the rectum before being ingested out of the anus. So these are the different processes. Digestion turns food that you eat into tiny particles to be absorbed in the bloodstream. I just want to go over that absorption. Remember, we said in the small intestine there are small, very, very tiny protrusions within the small intestine. So these are like fingers. We often say they are finger-like. So these finger-like small pieces, they have what is called capillaries within them. They have capillaries within them, and then those capillaries, they are the ones that take up those nutrients that are a result of digestion. Remember, digestion breaks down large food particles into smaller food particles. So those tiny molecules are then absorbed into the bloodstream through the villi. And where do we find the villi? We find the villi in the small intestine. Okay. Right, so there are two types of digestion. We have chemical digestion, which is the first one, and mechanical digestion. So chemical digestion, what happens? So this is when enzymes break down food into smaller pieces. So we have saliva in the mouth. That saliva has enzymes within it, and we have hydrochloric acid in the stomach. And we also have what is called mechanical digestion. So food is physically broken down through the process of chewing, the churning of the stomach, and mashing. So the teeth and the stomach take part in mechanical digestion. Okay, grade 9s, thank you so much for joining me in this lesson. Do not forget to wear your mask, to sanitize, and keep social distance. Until next time, so long.